Well, is it not come full circle? Something I spoke about in a offshoot video I did over a year ago seems to be coming forward. Now, we're going to talk about how Hasbro is hemorrhaging money and possibly is looking to sell Dungeons and Dragons. Before we fully get into the video, please do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, do all those fun things, and comment down below because that's important as well. First off, I gotta say this comes from an article called Pandaily, or Pandaily is a Beijing company that has put this out. The source to me isn't that good of one. It's not one that we know very well, and it's very strange that it is translated, putting it out there, not something I have to go out there and translate. Hasbro seeks to sell IP D&D and has a preliminary contact with Tencent. Now, back over a year ago, I made a video. The graphic below me is actually part of that video. Where I suggested that Hasbro is possibly looking to sell Wizards of the Coast or the branding within them. And it's very surprising, we see a year later, that the company has hemorrhaging money, that the money just doesn't make sense. They didn't make enough off the Baldur's Gate branding. In particular, that was also a Magic the Gathering set, not just a video game that came out from Larian Studios. They are listed in this article as well. Speed Daily exclusively learned that American toy company Hasbro is seeking to sell its well-known IP Dungeons and Dragons. Now, if you go to Speed Daily, this is not translated, right? This is in Chinese. So I would have to go through that. At present, the negotiations are still in the early stages and both parties have not reached an agreement on the details of the transaction. According to informed sources, the financial crisis faced by Hasbro is main reason for considering the sale of Dungeons and Dragons. And Tencent investments in Larian Studios, which is a 30% stake, is acting as the intermediary in its transaction. Larian Studios game Baldur's Gate 3 won the Game of the Year award in 2023 and is considered one of the most successful adaptations of Dungeons and Dragons, according to a lot of journalists and everything else that don't generally play Dungeons and Dragons. As a result, it is seen as a potential target buyer by Hasbro. However, due to insufficient funds, Larian ultimately introduced this deal to shareholder Tencent. Larian Studios here, yes, they are a big part in this. They maybe have the money for it after Baldur's Gate 3 being sold. Generally, they're only a $100 million company a year. They're not going to have enough money or capital to sit there and turn around and buy the brand outright, especially with D&D Beyond that Hasbro owns, that they paid millions of dollars for that branding, and then they completely pooched it by trying to change the OGL, and everyone that had a subscription to D&D Beyond decided to leave that subscription on the table and said, Hasbro, you can go take a hike. Hasbro founded in 1923. This talks about, however, the century-old enterprise is currently facing a huge crisis due to losses. Its stock price has dropped from a high of $108 in 2019 to a low of $51 as of January 26. When I did the video the thumbnail for below, that was over a year ago, and they were at $66. So they continue to lose market space. According to the financial report, as the third quarter of 2023, Hasbro has been experiencing consecutive losses for 4 quarters due to its main business of toy sales. The accumulation loss from quarter 2022 to quarter 3 2023 exceeds $500 million USD. It actually is more than that because they sold E1, which they had purchased for almost $4 billion and then sold for $500 million. That's a loss of over $3 billion. Last I did my math, as long as this napkin is right. And in quarter 2 2023, there was even negative free cash flow situation. According to Forbes reports, the response to the crisis, the company underwent significant layoffs last year with a total reduction of 1,900 employees, accounting for more than 20%, in which they had laid off the entire team that worked alongside of Larian Studios. According to the company as a whole in this loss situation, its D&D related IP is high quality asset and has achieved considerable success in video game adaptations. No, it hasn't. Look at Dark Alliance, it absolutely plummeted out there. Baldur's Gate 3 is the shining gem for the D&D adaptations right now. Last year, the release of Baldur's Gate 3 by Larian Studios was both critically acclaimed and commercially successful. Apparently, not only did it win the Game Awards included in Game of the Year, but it also generated a revenue of $657 million, as reported by Video Games Insights, which is a third-party estimated tool. Surpassing the Harry Potter IP game, Hogwarts Legacy, and that was only on Steam. That's not surpassing Harry Potter at all, which did over $1 billion by May. The inconsistencies are here. Harry Potter adaptation, Hogwarts Legacy, making it the most profitable PC exclusive game last year, and it wasn't exclusive on PC, it came out on the PS5. The successful Baldur's Gate 3 has also reflected the financial data of Hasbro. The financial report shows in the third quarter of 2023, driven by Baldur's Gate 3 and another Monopoly IP game called Monopoly Go, Hasbro electronic gaming and licensing related business achieved a contrary year-on growth of 40%, reaching $423 million. The money that Hasbro made wasn't this much. Like $423 million also includes Dungeons and Dragons as a whole and all digital sales. Everything digital that Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast makes. That category also included all of Magic the Gathering, which reflected in that year, which had made $1 billion that year from that cap. A Tencent interactive group insider revealed that Tencent representative by its overseas business department, IEG Global, is negotiating to aim of acquisition of a series of rights, including the adaptation rights of electronic games such as D&D. So they don't want to buy D&D at this point. They just want the rights to make video games based on Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, they are owned partially, like Larian Studios is owned 30% by Tencent. Is this some sort of partnership at this point? Where does this really go? Like Larian Studios, are they going to really make another game? And I don't see that happening because Hasbro literally tied their hands on this. And a lot of people say that they didn't. But if you go back and actually look at the Dungeons and Dragons Baldur's Gate Magic the Gathering set, they took things directly from the game and put them in the set and tied them together, right? So you know Hasbro has a huge hand that took part in the D&D Baldur's Gate 3 game, even though everyone says that they didn't. They didn't make the game. No, they made all the concepts for the game to be made. Larian Studios sat there in front of the computer and did the typing and do the drawings. Hasbro just gave them the story, the rules, and everything else to compact in there. If this acquisition is successful, it will enable Tencent to gain dominant control over IP of Dungeons and Dragons, which largely avoided aforementioned issues. Now, this is probably translated from Chinese to English, so the inconsistencies are abundant here, and there's a lot of things that just don't make sense. Tencent also lost millions of dollars in market cap with China banning loot. Tencent also lost millions of dollars in market cap with China banning loot boxes. That it sent their stock in a free fall. That's a lot of money to suddenly lose. Hasbro is in financial straits right now. With all the layoffs and everything that's come out of Hasbro, it's absolutely horrendous. Now, would Hasbro sit there and sell Dungeons and Dragons? I don't think so. Things would be very, very sketchy on the copyright issues, the IP issues. There would be a lot of things that would not necessarily be able to go forward if they were able to sell it properly, with a lot of people out there on the market that try to claim that they own part of it. And there's a whole different scenario in that sense. Can Tencent come up with the money? Probably. Would they do this? I don't know. I don't know. I would more rather see Tencent just buy Hasbro outright. There's a lot of inconsistencies that I see here. There's a lot of things like, who is going to publish the D&D books? Is Tencent going to start publishing books all of a sudden when that's a Hasbro thing, and Hasbro like subs that out to their contractors? Penguin Random House actually dropped Hasbro as a publisher, or as a contract at this point, so they've had to fall back to their other publishers. And this wouldn't be a situation where Tencent's going to swoop in and suddenly have deals with these publishers over Dungeons and Dragons. They're solely looking at this from a video game aspect and trying to bring it into video games. Would D&D Beyond then be up on the chopping block for Tencent? And I don't think so. I don't think Tencent even cares about that. They just want the rules and the ability to make D&D games. I don't know where that really lies, if it actually goes back to Wizards of the Coast being sold to Tencent at this point. It very well could be, but I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. And once again, we have a random article that's coming out onto the internet, and that we just kind of got to take with a grain of salt and say, listen, this is something we've heard, something I've even made the approach of. And, you know, the video that I had made was more of a joke video of a what if scenario, and now that what if scenario is coming forward. It's a very interesting time for Hasbro, and we will have to wait to see where they actually lie. Anyway, I'm your Proud Canadian Phoenix, Cindershadow. I'm signing off here. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you again very soon.